What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to TPA 8th Geek, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of a different video for you guys. I really hope you guys are excited for today's video. If you guys are, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on the post notification bell so you never miss out on any new content to come. Today's video, we're going to be talking about the rich and important history of Cuba's flag carrier, Cubana de Aviación. Cubana de Aviación was founded in October of 1929 and currently holds the title of the country's largest airline. Being founded in October of 1929, it became one of the earliest airlines to emerge in Latin America. It has its corporate headquarters in Havana, and its main base is located at Jose Marti International Airport. Originally a subsidiary of Pan American World Airways and a later private company owned by Cuban investors, Cubana has been wholly owned by the Cuban government since 1959. Cubana's focus cities include, but are not limited to, Antonio Maceo Airport in Santiago de Cuba, Juan Gualberto Gómez Airport in Varadero, and Frank Pais Airport in Holguín. Cubana was a founder and is a current member of the International Air Transport Association, known as IATA, the International Association of Aeronautical Telecommunications, SITA, and the International Association of Latin American Air Transport, IATAL. In the early years of the Cuban Revolution, the airline was established by Clement Melville Keyes on October 8th of 1929 as Compañía Nacional Cubana de Aviación Gurtiz S.A., initially as a flying school as well as a charter carrier, beginning scheduled services in 1930. The airline's name indicated its association with the Curtiss Aircraft Manufacturing Company. Cubana's early fleet used Curtiss Robin amphibian Sikorsky S-38, Ford Tri-Motor, and Lockheed Electra L-10 aircraft. Pan American acquired Cubana in 1932, and the word Curtiss was deleted from the carrier's name. By the end of the decade, the carriers had a fleet of 4 Ford Tri-Motors and 3 Lockheed Electras that operated on the domestic Havana to Camagüey, Havana Guantánamo, Guantánamo Baracoa, and Santiago to Baracoa routes. In 1944, the first international conference on civil aviation was convened, which later would lead to the creation of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. Cuba was a participant in this conference and a founding member of ICAO. In April of 1945, the conference that created the International Air Transport Association, IATA, was held in Havana. Cubana became a founding member of IATA and participated in the creation of the organization through its involvement with the Havana Conference and the resulting accords. Both conferences and the organizations they spawned helped establish Cubana as an internationally recognized airline company. In May of 1945, Cubana started its first scheduled international flights to Miami using Douglas DC-3 aircraft, making the airline the first Latin American one to establish scheduled passenger services to this city. In April 1948, a transatlantic route was started between Havana and Madrid via Bermuda, the Azores, and Lisbon, Portugal, using Douglas DC-4 aircraft. The Madrid route was extended to Rome, Italy in 1950. The new route to Europe made Cubana one of the earliest Latin American carriers to establish scheduled transatlantic service. In 1953, Airworks sold Cubana 3 Viscount 755s in advance of delivery. Cubana was also the first Latin American airline to operate turboprop aircraft, starting in the mid-1950s with the Vickers Viscount VV-755, which were put in service in its Miami and domestic routes, and later the Super Viscount VV-818. By March 1953, the carrier's fleet consisted of DC-3s and DC-4s. A year later, the strength of the fleet was 11, 6 DC-3s, 3 Lockheed Constellations, 1 C-46, and 1 Stinson. While 2 Super Constellations were on order upon delivery of the first of these aircraft in late 1954, the airline deployed it on the Mexico City to Madrid route. Cubana transported more than 227,000 passengers in 1955, and by that year end, it had 715 employees. In May 1957, the airline ordered 2 Bristol Britannia 318s intended to serve New York and Spain. An order for another 2 aircraft of the type was placed in the bid in 1958. The combined deal was worth US $14 million, aimed at replacing the Douglas DC-7s on the Havana to New York route. Cubana received the first of these aircraft in December 1958. It was put in service on that route immediately after being phased in. In May 1959, Cuba's new revolutionary government decided to take over Cubana, expropriating all of its investors. The private passenger airline Aerovías Q and private cargo carriers Cubana Aeropostal and Expreso Aéreo Interamericano were then merged into Cubana, which was rebranded as Empresa Consolidada Cubana de Aviación and had an initial state investment of 80%. It started operations on June 27, 1961. The airline had expanded earlier that year its scheduled transatlantic services, adding Prague to its European route network that solely included Madrid. Having stopovers at Bermuda and the Azores, the route was flown with Bristol Britannia's 318s. Cubana later sold one of its Britannias to Czechoslovak Airlines CSA, so that this carrier could start their own Prague to Havana flights. Cubana trained CSA's personnel in the operation of the Britannias. CSA's new service started in February 1962, initially flying the Prague to Manchester to Prestwick to Havana route, and then switching to the Prague to Shannon to Gander to Havana run. While the U.S. breaking relations in 1961 and the imposition of the US embargo on Cuba in 1962, Cubana was forced to cancel all its U.S. services and turned to the Soviet Union to obtain new aircraft. The first Soviet-built aircraft was delivered in the early 1960s, an Ilyushin IL-14 and IL-18, and were used in Cubana's domestic routes. Cubana thus became the first airline in the Americas at the time to operate Soviet-built aircraft. During the decade, an Antonov 12 and an Antonov 24s were also added to the fleet. Cubana's corporation made it possible for Aeroflot to establish 18-hour nonstop scheduled services between Moscow in Russia and Havana in Cuba in 1963, using Tupolev Tu-114 turboprop airliners, which were the longest nonstop flights in the world at that time. Cooperation with the East German airline Interflug also made it possible for this carrier to establish its first scheduled transatlantic services linking East Berlin with Havana. In March of 1970, the number of employees was 1,971. At this time, the carrier's fleet consisted of 5 Antonovs and 2 4Bs, 4 Britannia's 318, 2 C-46, 4 DC-3s, 1 DC-4, 10 Ilyushins 14s, and 4 Ilyushins 18s. Regular services to Peru, Chile, Panama, and Guyana, and several other Caribbean destinations were started in early and mid-1970s. Cubana also began operating Tupolev Tu-14 and Ilyushin IL-76, Yakovlev Yak-40s, and Yak-42 jets in the mid-1970s. These aircraft made it possible to upgrade Cubana's domestic service and to expand or start new services to Central and South America and to some Caribbean destinations. Regular services to Canada were also started as Cuba began to develop its tourism sector. Routes to Africa were started in the mid-1970s, serving Angola, Guinea-Bissau, and Cape Verde. Cubana subsequently ceded one of its IL-62M jets to Angola's national airline, TAG, TAAG, so that it could start its own Luanda to Havana flights. In cooperation with Cubana's services on that route, this allowed TAG to start its own first ever transatlantic route. In the late 1970s, Cubana started services to Iraq, becoming the first Latin American airline to serve Asia, although these services were discontinued in the early 1980s. As of March of 1990, Cubana had 5,658 employees, and its fleet consisted of 12 Antonovs 24RVs, 26 Antonov An-26s, 4 IL-18s, 11 Ilyushins IL-62Ms, and 2 IL-76Ds. It also consisted of 8 Tupolev Tu-154s, 5 Tupolevs 154B2s, and 3 Tupolev 154MS. Along with that, they also had 12 Yak 40s, and at this time, the airline flew internationally to Barbados, Basel, Berlin, Bissau, Buenos Aires, Georgetown, Kingston, Lima, Luanda, Madrid, Managua, Mexico City, Montreal, Panama City, Paris, and Prague. It also served a domestic network consisting of Baracoa, Camagüey, Holguín, Nícaro, Nueva Gerona, Santiago de Cuba, and Las Tunas. In the early 1990s, Cubana pursued a multifaceted strategy to face the challenges posed by the dissolution of the Socialist Bloc and the Soviet Union. This strategy targeted a restructuring of Cubana's fleet, the revamping of the airline's technical capabilities, and upgrading the quality of passenger services. After the early 1990s, spare parts for Cubana's Soviet-built aircraft became increasingly harder to source. Limited financial resources and lack of Western financing to replace these aircraft, coupled with restrictions imposed by the US embargo on the scale of American-built aircraft and components, including engines and avionics, made it necessary to keep some of the airline's Soviet-built airplanes in service. Cubana received its last three new Ilyushin's IL-62Ms in the late 1990s and early 1991, along with two other also new similar aircraft in 1988 and 1989, and was able to keep them in service long after the Soviet Union's dissolution and the end of all Ilyushin IL-62 production in the mid-1990s. Cubana started leasing some Western aircraft, Airbus and Boeing, specifically for limited periods of time in the mid-1990s to help sustain its services to Europe, Canada, and some Latin American destinations, given the rapid growth of Cuba's tourism sector. In the early 2000s, Cubana refurbished several of its Ilyushin's IL-62Ms to use on some of its international routes. All but one of these aircraft were removed from services in 2011, and in 2004, it embarked on a long-term renovation program. The strategy is based on the purchase of $100 million a year in a new generation Russian-built aircraft until 2012. As of 2012, Cubana had completely renovated its fleet with new generation Russian airliners. As part of its renovation strategy, Cubana has sought to upgrade its technical support capabilities. The airline established a joint venture company with Iberia Airlines of Spain in 2005 to maintain and overhaul Western-built aircraft such as Airbus and Boeing. In July of 2004, the airline placed an order for two convertible Ilyushin's IL-96-300s worth $110 million. In this deal, 85% of the price was financed by a loan from Rose Exim Bank, while Cuba's Avia Import raised the money for the balance. In December of 2005, Cubana received the first of these aircraft, becoming the first customer of the type beyond the Russian borders. In April 2006, Cuba signed another deal worth $250 million at the time on behalf of Cubana for the purchase of another two Ilyushin IL-96-300s and three Tupolev Tu-204s. Two of these Tupolev Tu-204s, one passenger and one cargo version, were handed over to the carrier in June and August of 2007 respectively. During the August 2007 MAKS Airshow, Cubana signed a Memorandum of Understanding with Ilyushin Finance Company IFC for the purchase of another two Tupolev Tu-204s and three Antonov 148s. A Tupolev Tu-204 freighter was never delivered to the company due to financing problems. In July of 2012, Cubana de Aviación signed a contract with IFC for its delivery of three Antonov 158 aircraft. In February 2013, Cubana signed a deal for the order of three 350-seater Ilyushin IL-96-400s. In April of the same year, Cubana received its first Antonov 158. Cubana received another two Antonov 158s during 2013, and the delivery of the third example marked the signing of another contract for three more aircraft of the type, scheduled for delivery in 2014. A fourth Antonov 158 was delivered in April 2014, and as of July of 2014, Antonov was to deliver to the airline a fifth aircraft of the type. In July of 2024, as of the recording of this video, Cubana's current fleet consists of a Tupolev Tu-204 registered Charlie Uniform Tango 1702, It also consists of an ATR 42500 registered Charlie Uniform Tango 1240, as well as an ATR 72/7212 registered Charlie Uniform Tango 1548, and an Illusion IL-96-300 registered Charlie Uniform Tango 1251. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. If you guys did, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on the post notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content to come. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to leave down in the comments below what you thought about this video. I'll see you guys in the next video as TPA 8th Geek is signing off.